Prostate cancer screening is changing, and a study published last week in the New England Journal of Medicine will reinforce that trend and perhaps open up prostate cancer screening for all men. With more, here's the host of the Health Report and the What's That Rash podcast, Dr. Norman Swan.
Prostate cancer is a relatively common cancer in men, but it's actually not the commonest cause of cancer death. Many men die with prostate cancer rather than of prostate cancer. Nonetheless, it would be good to have an effective screening program for prostate cancer if it was safe and effective, because early prostate cancer is curable. So that makes there's a lot of incentive there. The trouble is the test is terrible for prostate cancer. It's a blood test called PSA. And if it's raised, it's just as likely to be an enlarged prostate, which is benign, rather than a tumour there. But it does, if your PSA blood test is raised, then it does increase the risk that you've got a prostate cancer there. The trouble is, the prostate cancer that's there might be entirely meaningless. In other words, it might not go anywhere at all and certainly not kill you. And therefore, but many men are tempted to have treatment for it, even though it's not going to be a problem for the rest of their lives. And the treatment can be quite toxic, causing erectile dysfunction, incontinence, and so on. So can you improve prostate cancer screening? And so what used to happen was a man would get his prostate-specific antigen done, his PSA test, it would be raised, and then the urologist would do multiple biopsies of the prostate in the hope of finding a tumour. And what would often happen in that circumstance is that they would find cancer cells and not know whether those meant anything at all, which either meant the man had to be followed or treated at that point. What's happened in recent years, and Australia's been a pioneer of this, is the introduction of MRI scanning. So an MRI of the prostate. And the process is a man gets a prostate-specific antigen. If it's raised, then the urologist refers him to a radiologist for an MRI scan. And then the MRI scan doesn't pick up the relatively benign tumours, it picks up the potentially nasty ones, which the surgeon can then go and biopsy. And what that does is it halves, or it doesn't halve, it reduces the biopsy rate, the need for a biopsy quite dramatically. The question is it safe? In other words, are you missing anything here by not doing these multiple biopsies? Because what the surgeon then does is go for where he sees the lump, or she sees the lump on the MRI. And a trial last week looked at this, a randomized trial, the old way versus the new way with MRI scanning, and showed it was just as good at picking up tumours that were potentially life-threatening and therefore needed treatment, and good at not finding, which is what you want, the tumours that didn't mean anything. And luckily in Australia, the MRI is reimbursable under Medicare, so you can actually have that. So men should now expect, if they want to have a PSA test, not compulsory, then they've got to be prepared that they should have an MRI scan afterwards, if it's raised, to check whether there's anything really serious going on. And this study shows that it's safe and effective.
You've also been looking at whether melatonin, Norman, works for jet lag, insomnia, and even infertility. Yeah,
we get lots of questions on our podcast, What's That Rash, about melatonin. And melatonin is a hormone. It's produced in the brain just above where the nerves from the eyes cross, and it goes up at night. So in animals, it helps adjust to the day-night cycle, and it helps us as human beings adjust to the day-night cycle. And so it rises and is associated with the onset of sleep. But it's a hormone and has effects on different parts of the body. The trouble is, the hormone, when it is produced naturally, is at 40 micrograms per litre in the body, whereas we are taking it in doses, when we take it as a drug, that are 2,000 to 4,000 times higher than the normal. So we're not taking it as a natural substance. We're taking it in massive doses. And this long-term safety has not been shown. So if you're taking it for sleep and you're otherwise healthy, it probably advances the onset of sleep by 10 minutes. Kids with neurodevelopmental problems, it's more effective and probably advances sleep by 30 or 40 minutes. So that's a big boon for parents, so it can work there. But the long-term use has not been, the safety has not been studied well. We don't understand that. With reproduction, as you mentioned, so in animals, it affects melatonin affects reproduction. In humans, in women, it probably improves ovulation, but in men, it probably deteriorates sperm quality. So there's all sorts of stuff going on with melatonin. So fine, if you want to try it for jet lag and a little bit for insomnia, do so, but be very careful with long-term use.
More on the Health Report on RN and on the What's That Rash podcast. Good to see you, Norman.
Pleasure.